The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members. On today's episode of On Scope, Agency Mania Solutions' Bruno Gralpois joins us to break down the unseen costs of an agency review. And we're talking programmatic media transparency on the first ever ANA Research Roundup. All that next on Scope. And if you can believe it, this is On Scope, the marketing podcast brought to you by the ANA and powered by Odyssey, a leading audio streaming platform. You can get your favorite podcasts, your favorite music, and all your entertainment on the Odyssey app. I'm your host, Mike Berberich, and with me as always, Ryan Dinger, producer of On Scope. Ryan, big day for the pod today. Would you agree?
I would 100% agree, Mike. It is a super exciting day here for the pod. We're debuting a new segment, which you previewed in your queue up here. But before we do that, I have a question for you.
Ooh,
you were doing a little reference there with your intro.
Yeah, I was.
That's been going viral on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, what percentage of On-Scope listeners do you think understood that reference?
Oh, absolutely infinitesimal, Ryan. Sometimes you just got to do something for number one.
Because they got to be, you're a marketer, you're plugged into culture, right? You have to understand these trends and what's going on.
But that's actually kind of a cool and terrifying thing about the current media landscape.
Yeah.
There are so many subcultures that are massive, absolutely massive. I forget who I was talking to last year, but if you cut a survey between Gen Z and boomers and you ask them about Michael Jordan and Mr. Beast, there'd be who is this guy on both sides? And there'd be yeah, he's one of the biggest, most recognizable people on the planet on each side. So I think there are a lot of people out there that immediately got it, and you're my people. But I'm sure that there are tons of other folks who are so deep in the meme depths, in the meme ocean, that I've never heard of.
It's hard for me to imagine a person who doesn't know who Michael Jordan is. But your point is well taken. I'm not everybody. My perspective is only one. And really, this is a fantastic segue into our new segment, because we're talking about what is a increasingly complex and fragmented media landscape. And as it turns out, that complex and fragmented media landscape has been posing some issues for marketers. And that's how did we do that? Amazing. Amazing that we set it up this way.
Serendipity's always on the co-pilot here at On Scope. What Ryan's referring to is a little bit of the historical moment we've been playing up. This is the first ever ANA Research Roundup. With me today, Julie Weitzner, SVP of Brand and Media here at the ANA. Julie, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. I do have a question for you.
Yes?
Are you ready to make history?
Let's do it.
All right, because it's happening either way. This is the first ever research roundup here at the On Scope podcast. The ANA does so much incredible proprietary research, and we thought that we needed to start giving it a spotlight. And what better way to start than with the ANA's Programmatic Transparency Benchmark for Q1 of 2025. Julie, I am an easily excitable person, but this is a brand new level even for me. Are you ready to jump in and talk about this benchmark?
Yes. So appreciate you bringing up the Q1 benchmark. That is actually a continuation of work that began way back.
Oh, do tell.
So back in 2023, the ANA ran a study with 21 brand participants, and we collected log-level data across their three partners in the programmatic supply chain, their DSP, their SSP, and their ad verification partner. And with that, we were able to map out the cost waterfall. Where are the costs going? And how much money is actually ending up in working media? And unfortunately, that number was 36 cents, which is
Ooh.
exactly
Ooh.
not okay.
No.
And so we wanted to continue that work so that we could help our brand marketers have as much of their media investment go towards more productive media as humanly possible.
I mean, that's a huge, huge, huge win if we can get that going, because even like a few cents in the right direction scales up very quickly to a lot of resources coming back to the marketer's hands.
Absolutely, especially as more and more dollars are transacted programmatically.
100%.
I mean, that's where the market's headed.
Mm-hmm.
So back in 2023, we actually had a pretty key finding around made for advertising sites, or these MFAs. We found that 15% of spend and over 20% of ad impressions were going towards these low-quality, made-for-advertising sites, and we've all been on them. Oftentimes we get there from paid traffic sourcing, things like, top 5 party schools, top beaches in the Caribbean, these sort of catchy headlines that get us to click. And once we arrive on that site, there's a really high ad-to-content ratio, pretty bad user experience. It's probably not original content. And we're forced to go through these carousels of ads that advertisers are paying for.
Yeah.
And, this was a big aha moment. And when we sort of shone that spotlight on that, we saw a significant decline in those MFA sites because marketers were like, hey, I don't want that on my media plan. And now I know what to look for. I'm going to take those out. So that was a pretty big moment for us in the 2023 study. And now we're continuing in 2024. We launched the Programmatic Transparency Benchmark, which is always on. This isn't time gated. This one is always on. We have over 45 marketer participants right now, and that's rolling. And we're welcoming more brands every day. In fact, if any brands listening to this are interested, we would, welcome the opportunity to onboard you. And the onboarding is pretty simple. It's access to your data. And with that, you'll really be able to understand what's going on under the hood.
I love it. And yeah, I'm very glad you brought up the MFA kind of situation, because I've been here at the INA for 12 years now, and we have been kind of banging the drum of media transparency for I feel like at least a decade. But to see progress and to see it that notable that it jumps out on a chart is really incredible. And kudos to the entire brand and media team to taking what was a successful report and pushing forward and making it more and keeping it going. I think that's so important. One thing I wanted to ask your opinion about, as the AI craze takes over every single topic of conversation, I imagine that AI was deployed to make more and more and more of these MFAs because it's so formulaic. If you don't know what we're talking about, is if you've ever landed on a web page and feel like you are transported back to 2002, that's an MFA. But do you think AI played a role in the proliferation of these, that they almost got too visible and their kind of head came above the water, that allowed us to identify it and make this pretty major change in the industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think absolutely AI has definitely led to the proliferation of MFA sites. And that's why we give our brand marketers the guidance to have inclusion lists versus exclusion lists, because it's so hard to stay on top of those domains as, new ones are generated every moment, right?
Yeah.
Via AI, they know the formula. Those are served to humans. They have high completion rates. They're low CPM.
Yep.
And so they meet a lot of the criteria that buyers have, unfortunately. So they sort of trick the system. So with an inclusion list, you can take better control. So that's definitely one of our guidelines for marketers, is to have inclusion lists.
I love that. Because, yeah, you're so right. Keeping up with it is just a fool's errand. And I love when we can turn anything that's negative into a proactive positive.
Yeah.
I just think that's the way in the right direction. Are there any other, because that's a great, simple, but really can change a lot of stuff if you change your mindset from exclusion to inclusion lists. Are there any other pieces of practical advice that have come from this benchmark so far for our marketers?
Yeah, another big piece of advice we have is to execute direct contracts with the suppliers in the programmatic chain, because starting with your DSP, that's the place to start, because you can then have better control of your costs, your data costs, your transaction costs, and have more understanding of the direct line that you have with the seller themselves. And that's probably part B of that, which is have direct seller relationships. Like, as you want to eliminate as many hops in the programmatic supply chain as possible. The more hops, the more you introduce risk. It also increases the carbon footprint, the more hops you have. So there's a lot of good that comes out of those more direct supply paths.
I absolutely love it. To all of our marketers listening, especially our ANA members, if you want to dive into the entire benchmark report, and importantly, I want to point out that if there hadn't been these marketers and these brands that agreed to work with us, share their log level data, that's the lifeline of all of these findings. There is no big aha moment about MFAs if you, the marketer, didn't get involved and help us bring this to life. So get the report, get smart on it, start saving some money, start putting some money back into your own budgets. And we would love it if you'd consider joining this force to make a better media industry in the future. Julie, where can they do all that and more?
One-stop shop at ana.net/programmatic. And, joining the benchmark gives them access to a monthly proprietary report so that they will get to see their entire supply chain, how much is going to DSP costs, how much is going to invalid traffic or MFA, how much is measurable. They'll get all of those piece parts in their proprietary and confidential report on a monthly basis. And then quarterly, importantly, we're releasing out to the industry anonymized aggregated data and trend lines. So, we're really committed to making this a better space for marketers.
I love it. We're going to keep the momentum going. Everybody, again, that URL, ana.net/programmatic. Julie, it's been such a pleasure having you on the pod.
Thanks for having me.
And there we have it, everybody. History is made. And speaking of history is made, it was so heartening to hear that after the ANA has been doggedly pursuing this media transparency issue, we are getting some wins.
Yeah, it's been about 9 years in the making that we've been on top of this issue. I remember media transparency being huge. Like, we did our first research report, I believe, in 2016. So almost a decade in the making. And we are starting to see some progress, which is huge. Starting to make sense of this increasingly fragmented and complex media landscape that we discussed at the top of the show.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
Huge thank you to Julie.
Oh, yeah.
One of the brightest minds here at the ANA.
Without a doubt.
A true star.
Yes, indeed.
And we were lucky to have her.
Yes, and cheers to her bravery for joining us on the inaugural voyage. But, I think that it was such a perfect place to start because it highlights the impact and importance of ANA proprietary research.
Yes.
This is incredibly educational for our ANA members, but we're not just out there to post numbers. We're out there to change the game. And this is concrete evidence that what we're doing is working.
Yeah, and really only the ANA is uniquely suited to be able to do that, to both find the problems and offer the solutions. Read the research that the ANA does, and we're going to be featuring more of it on this segment. I've felt for a long time it's some of the most valuable stuff that we put out, right behind On Scope, the marketing podcast. No, I'm just kidding. I actually think the research is right there, but selfishly.
Come on. Your baby's always the cutest, right? But and another thing I want to just touch on, as Julie said, almost all of our research reports are not only incredibly good content, but they are calls to join the forces that are coming together to make this a better industry. So if you hear about an ANA research report, chances are there's an opportunity for you, dear ANA member, to get in on the ground floor.
Amen. And chances are, if you are a marketer working in programmatic media, you're probably working with an agency.
Oh, almost certainly.
And as it turns out, that is the topic of interest in our main segment today, You want to tell them what it is, Mike?
Well, yeah, programmatic media has probably caused a dust-up or two between client and agency
You
in
would
the
think so.
past
Yes.
9 or 10 years. But that's not the only reason that a relationship can get a little bit strained, and often the result is an agency review. We hear about them all the time.
Yeah.
But there are unseen costs that might not be on the marketer's radar. And we went and we searched for the right person to break that down.
As we always do.
As we always do. Due diligence, #1 here at OnSco. But I don't think that I'm exaggerating when I say we found the guest to talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
Let me break it down. Our guest today has been dedicated to helping the world's largest brands collaborate better with their agency partners and unlock greater value. Those brands include Microsoft, Visa, Nestle, AT&T, Apple, and more. Literally, if this were a 2-hour podcast, I could just fill the first hour up with them. In 2013, he co-founded Agency Mania Solutions as a leading technology firm specializing in helping large brands produce more efficient outcomes by managing the dynamics of the client-agency relationship. Today, dear friends, he joins the pod to talk about agency reviews and the hidden costs therein. Get ready, because my conversation with Bruno Gralpois is up next. Everyone, today is a day of celebration for like 100 different reasons. Chief among them, I have my friend, the A&A's friend, everybody in this industry's friend, Bruno Gralpois, the co-founder and principal of Agency Mania Solutions in the building. Bruno, thank you so much for being a guest on our pod.
Thank you for having me.
So we are, and I know that this is going to be out a little bit later, but I don't care because yesterday was a very special day. Today, I don't mind saying, is a pretty special day. We've got some birthdays in the house. Bruno, you want to let them know what I'm talking about here, at least for yesterday?
I'll start with mine, I guess.
Yes,
You'll go
please.
next? Okay, so we are celebrating our 12-year anniversary as a company at Agency Mania Solutions.
That is so exciting. So this is a party on top of what is going to be a really cool conversation. And I also happen to be the very next day, today, as we are recording this, is my birthday. We don't need to get into numbers, but, but we're
Let's keep
celebrating
that part.
nonetheless. Exactly.
Happy birthday.
Thank you so much, Bruno. So what we're talking about today is actually based on an amazing article that you put together, and it's one of the genres of conversation that I love having here on Scope. And it's about something that's been out in the open in plain view, and we just never discuss it. What am I talking about? I am talking about the unseen costs of an agency review. So let's kind of start from the top. Why is an agency review such a go-to move for brands in the first place? I mean, is it putting up a signal that they're like serious business? Is it an inability to look in the mirror? Or is it really the right move to do it as frequently as we're seeing in the industry?
That's a great question. And there are many answers to that because obviously reviews happen for different reasons. But there are 4 major trends, I think, that are contributing, I guess, to these phenomenon. The number one is there's budget pressure in the marketplace, without a doubt. So people want to do more with less, and sometimes that means doing it with someone else. Or sometimes that budget pressure means you want maybe to have conversation with your incumbent agency, and the review is a means by which you can maybe renegotiate your deal. So that's one of the reasons. The second reason is a change in compensation methods. There's been, historically, the ANA actually does study, compensation study on a regular basis. 80+% of most compensation agreements are labor-based. And there is a desire to move to more of project-based work, competitive bids, as a way, again, to address some of that budget pressure. So that's maybe a second reason. The third reason I think is interesting to me is the change of leadership's assessment or perception of long-term relationships. It used to be like we thought, wow, long-term relationships are really the kind of relationship you want to pursue, right?
Right.
And the reason for that is because you thought, well, you build institutional knowledge, you build a relationship over the years, you get better work, better value from the work. And that's changing a little bit. And I think it's changing. There may be multiple reasons for that. One might be that there is so much attrition in the marketplace,
Yeah.
talent attrition,
Yes.
that you're thinking long-term relationship is a good thing, but the people that you're working with are changing on a regular basis. So that perception, I think, is going away. Long-term relationship doesn't always mean better, especially if your agency is becoming complacent.
Yep.
So that's another reason. So again, long-term is no longer a thing. So maybe reviews becomes kind of a more natural thing across the board. And then the last one is AI. AI is kind of changing the game. Agencies are reacting to AI, they're adopting to AI, they're leading in AI, but not everybody's going to lead and win in a marketplace. So I think the reviews is the way for you to assess who's doing well with it and whether or not, there's a better partner for you, out there.
So I love that. Actually, that kind of opens things and clarifies things a lot, that you're not always doing a review to do a review. There are other areas. You're not always doing, let me say that, you're not always doing a review because you want to get rid of something and get something else. There are things that are triggered by a review that might be the real value that brands are looking for. It's very, very interesting. And you're so right about the attrition in the industry. Before coming to the ANA, I worked at an unnamed big digital agency for about 6 years. And what would happen when the two owning families would switch that 5149 is you'd get a bunch of bright-eyed young folks who would just cut the head off the entire senior leadership team and remake it in their image. And now is like, what's your relationship with the logo? You know what I mean? So
That's
I really love that. I really love that you brought that up. So, okay, there are a lot of different reasons that a brand may start that review. However, I don't think that it's readily apparent all of the costs that are involved truly in that review. So could you take us through the cost of an agency review that might be under the surface or just not on marketers' radars?
And as I address the question of cost of review, I must mention that there is another type of review that I didn't mention in the prior 4 examples that is mandated by the company. So there are a number of companies that have this 3-year mandate where procurement has to start a review. Sometimes marketing doesn't even want it. The marketing leadership doesn't want it. It's like, we're happy with the agency, but every 3 years, it's a corporate policy.
Exactly.
And we have to go through that process. So, but to your point around the cost of reviews, it's quite significant. And they've been, actually, the ANA again, in partnership with the 4As, conducted a study not so long ago, the cost of a pitch, that attempted at really trying to quantify how much of a review can cost. And the costs are significant, both on the client, but also on the agency side.
Yeah.
And I think the numbers came at about over $1 million, for a typical review where you have 3 agencies in the review. That's the average cost. So if you're doing it with the incumbent agency, it's actually a little bit higher. It's like 1.2. But we're looking at a $1 to $1.2 million for an average review. That's a cost, quite significant, right?
Yeah, I mean, then that's on top of, if you're doing this because maybe business isn't the greatest thing, that is a loss right there.
Right.
That where is that coming back? Is this new relationship, or is the kind of fire you lit a $2.5 million revenue generating fire? That is kind of crazy. And beyond that, there is, I mean, back to the point of, we're dealing with people here. It kind of reminds me, in sports, there's something called arbitration, where a player comes up and it's like, they and the team go, and it's like, well, we don't think we should pay you this much for the last year that you're here, and all of that stuff. But at the end of that, feelings can get hurt and egos bruised in a lot of that. So, is there a cost of maybe a superficial review where you just kind of wanted to suss it out, maybe negotiate down a price, but now the work is suffering or the relationship is suffering?
Well, there's a lot of applications, I guess, as you pointed out, to doing a review. cost is one. There's also a significant amount of cost that's maybe hidden or people don't necessarily factor in when they start the process, which is worth talking about. Duplication of agency fees. You are terminating a relationship with one agency. The new agency is coming in. You obviously want them ideally to overlap a little bit so people can transition the work. That's significant. That's a big cost. There's obviously potentially delays in campaign work that may impact the performance of the work. There's a ramp up. Obviously, the new agency is going to take a little while to ramp up, train people, get them where they need to be. And the productivity is not going to be there, right? It's like people are like learning how to work together, how do we do this? But I think the biggest risk of reviews, once you make that decision, is a failed new relationship. Because when you move away, like the expression, the green's always, the grass is always greener.
Exactly.
It's eventually you hope for a better outcome. You hope for a better relationship. And what if it doesn't?
Yeah.
The cost is 10 times greater than maybe what you even invested in actually conducting that review. So there's a lot of kind of warning signs and indicators that, you have to be very careful when you start a review. You better know what you're doing. You better know you're committed to see it through. And you have to know instinctively, but also factually, that you're going to get a better relationship overall.
Really, really well said. Listeners, stick around because when we come back, we're going to talk about how it's really that time when a review is going to be the thing that is going to drive value and be best for your organization. Stick around. You're not going to want to miss it. Ryan, can you help me with something?
I would be happy to, Mike.
I appreciate it. You know how my brain's kind of like garbage?
Well, we've been talking about how you should be kinder to yourself, but go on.
So anyway, garbage brain. Can you help me remember how long you and I have known each other?
Oh, it's been at least 10 years. That we've known each other. Yeah.
We're definitely a decade in on this.
What's the 10-year anniversary? Is that like the silver anniversary? Do you remember?
I think it is actually. I think it is. I'll be looking forward to that. And I was thinking, you and I, coworkers, buddies outside of this, I feel like our relationship would be the envy of a lot of brands and agencies out there.
I think so. I don't know how much they're thinking about that, but if they were aware, surely they would be jealous.
Well, they're thinking about it now, I'll tell you that. True. And I was like, we could probably really help some brands and agencies like craft a relationship that's built to last. But tragically, we are far too busy with this fine show of ours.
It's a beautiful but impossible vision.
Yes.
Unfortunately. Yes.
And wouldn't you know it? Who's here to help? The ANA's here to help.
Oh, look at that. The ANA once again coming with the goods.
This time, they are partnering with the 4A's to present a report on AOR relationship tenure. That's Agency of Record Relationship Tenure.
See, that brain's not so bad. Look at that. You put
there
that
you
together
go.
right there.
Oh, come on now. This report is going to teach you how long-term agency partnerships are evolving, what's working, and how to build stronger, more sustainable collaborations. I mean, I'm interested, not even that we need the help, but that's got to be some great stuff in there for both brands and agencies to consider.
Yeah, and important stuff. The client agency relationship has been in peril in a lot of ways, and that's unfortunate because the third-party perspective that you get from agencies is critical to your brand success.
1,000,000%, and we've seen it in action when the relationship between a brand and a partnership when you get that right. My goodness, the marketing that comes from that is just a level above.
Amen.
So if you want to get on this train, I would suggest you head on over to ana.net/tenure report. That's ana.net/TENUREREPORT. And now, back to our show. And we are back. I am here with the one and only Bruno Gralpois, the co-founder and principal of agency Mania Solutions. We are talking about the hidden costs of an agency review. Now, we went over a couple of the reasons direct or indirect, that a brand may go into agency review, whether it be the marketer's decision or not in some cases. And we also talked about things that marketers might not really be thinking about. This isn't a clean process. This isn't a linear process. This is messy and expensive.
Mhm.
But that's not to say that it's not sometimes the exact right move. So let's talk about, when does one know that it's really time for a review?
There are signs, clearly. And I like to think about, this in kind of a four-step process. First is improving the relationship. That to me is a given. Most of the brands and their agencies adopt these culture of accountability where improving the work and the relationship should be part of the ongoing fabric of the relationship. Meaning on a regular basis, maybe once or twice a year, you have this formal sit down where you look at how well you're doing, how well you're working together, and whether there's improvement opportunities to do that. And based on that, you're getting a feel for what you need to do and if there are things that need to be really acted upon and improved. So that's one indicator. And that's part of the assessment you do. The other step might be that you are identifying things that need improvement, and then you're putting action plans in place. And that's, again, that's kind of second step, very natural part of that assessment process where you're going to be improving the long-term relationship of the partnership by just taking action, taking accountability. And it works on both sides of the fence, as one might expect. But sometimes it doesn't work. So to your point, that's a sign. And the sign could be that, you need to fix the relationship, and maybe the relationship needs to be an improvement plan. So you're like, we've seen that issue recurring on a recurring basis. We're not seeing much of traction. It's a sign that we need to really sign a very strong signal here. We need to put you on an improvement plan until we fix it, and we're going to give ourselves some time to do that. If you don't do it by a certain amount of time, then we're like, okay, we need to actually take action here. And that's maybe, again, a trigger for an agency review. But, there are, again, signs. You have to read the signs across the board. There are multiple things. It could be, obviously, external signs. Maybe the agency gets acquired, something happened, change of leadership, things are really fundamentally going to change the dynamic of the relationship. You have to be aware of that. You have to be sensitive to that. And it might affect the relationship down the road. So maybe in that particular case, you're proactively, not reactively, thinking, well, maybe it's time for us to look at whether or not we have the right partner in place. So the signs are just as many as there are reasons for a review. But there are a couple that can be, again, formally identified through a very committed process of reviewing the relationship, looking at the feedback you're getting from your stakeholders, and deciding whether or not the action plan that are putting in place are effectively impacting the relationship positively.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, in that, like, the review should be the least surprising thing to happen when it does happen, if you're doing this right. Because there should be a trail of communication. There should be a trail of plans put in place. There should be a trail of, like, eye-to-eye moments of, like, we've been doing all of this, what's going on? So I love that, because sometimes you see a brand go up for review and you're like, oh, okay. Sometimes it's a head scratcher. And I think in those situations, they probably jumped before doing these steps in order and really making sure that they're addressing the actual problem. And that is actually, I'm going to do my little self a tap on the shoulder there. That's actually a segue into what I wanted to talk about next, is that, in some of these cases, they may be looking at symptoms and not realizing the cause of their problem. And sometimes it's not your agency, it's your agency model.
Yes.
So how do you figure out whether your current agency model is correct for you? Because that is talk about starting a 1,000-mile journey on the wrong step one, you know? So how do you as a marketer determine that internally? It could be a little tough.
It could be tough. And we mentioned again that there are a number of variables that can impact whether a review is needed. You mentioning the agency model, it is a fundamental thing because when you look at like we all do, trade price, ad week, ad age, we see all these reviews in the news. And that becomes kind of the primary focus of conversations around, oh my God, like, and to your point, nobody should be surprised it's happening, unless you're in denial as an agency. You kind of saw it coming, and maybe you try to take action, and that didn't really, pan out. But then the brand is taking action on their end, and that's very significant. But your point, the agency model is critical because if you think about kind of this concept of the iceberg, the tip of the iceberg is what you see in the news, that review. What's sitting underneath, which is 85%, in my opinion, of why a review will take place, is actually having the wrong agency, operating maybe in the right model, meaning you have not paired your model to your right agency. And agency model is a very interesting thing from experience. I see a lot of brands who don't necessarily think strategically about the model. They kind of naturally, the model evolved by itself, and it's never been really declared clearly. It's never been kind of defined clearly. It kind of evolved over the years, and it became what it is. And then you go in a marketplace and you hire the best agency you can think of, like the one of some of the most awarded agencies, and you're like, how could we fail? We hired the best. Well, I like to use it as a metaphor. For me, it's like if you're going on a rally and you want to be competing and you maybe decide you're gonna get the best car. You're gonna get a Lamborghini or a McLaren, right? A supercar.
Right.
But yet you're gonna go into these in the jungle, right? You're gonna go in these very uneven and totally inappropriate place for one of those supercar. You'll be better off with this SUV, a sports SUV.
A cheap Jeep, yeah.
Exactly, or cheap Jeep. So the problem is sometimes, again, the model is not matched to the agency. And then you have the best agency operating the wrong model, and they ultimately are doomed to fail. So you need to spend the right time setting up the right model. You have to do it sequentially. You set up the model, and then you find the right agency partner. And again, it's not often the case. Sometimes the agency relationship been in place for a long time. The agency model evolved, it changed for the right reasons. But the agency relationship never evolved. And you're stuck. And you're stuck and it's not working. So to your point, having the right agency model is step one. Then having the right agency for that model is step two. But we have to stop thinking about, I'm going to hire the best agency and then my world will be better. It doesn't work that way. You have to have the two coming together.
Yes, absolutely. And you just reminded me, in my second life, I'm a musician. And there's that one type of musician that will have like a $5,000 guitar and still hasn't taken a lesson on it yet. And you're just trying to get the gear, and the gear's not going to help you if you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, to your point, that makes so much sense, but I feel like that's happening in the industry so often. Well, we got the best. Why should I have to worry beyond that? It's an agency partnership. You're going to have to do something in this partnership. And before I leave you off to this wonderfully lovely day, I since you're here with us, you are the POV on the agency client relationship in our industry. As far for my money, you're the be all end all. So can you tell us, we've been talking a lot about when things are not perfect, when it's, time for that kind of counseling, or is this a breakup moment? What are some things that you've seen in your experience that the best client agency relationships just always seem to have? What are those common themes when it's just absolute poetry in motion of a partnership?
That's a money question because obviously very, very, very
there's a lot. That I know
very
I'm asking you to
often
boil
brands,
the ocean in our last couple of minutes here. But...
No, it's a very, very, very good question because I get that question quite a bit. And what's the secret recipe here? What's the secret sauce for relationship? And we are entering, in my opinion, we've seen many things, but we are entering the relationship kind of capital era where we know we can't succeed in marketplace alone, and we need to have the right partners. And these partnerships are transformational. They have an impact in the marketplace that's incredible. And so it's essential to do it right. And to your point, if I have to pick one, that old kind of a dating or breaking up kind of thing about it's not you, it's me.
Right.
Well, when it happens on the relationship side, on the business side, it's often the case. I think the best advice I can always give to a brand is making sure you do the work internally to be the best possible client you can be. Finding the right agency will come along. Again, when you have the right model, you find the right agency, you've done your part. But that's the easy part. What's hard is making sure you are the best possible client for them. And that operational excellence and that commitment to the partnership, those things don't come easy, and you have to work at it. And you have to be the very best client you can be for them and be the client of choice. Because if you're the client of choice, the agency will deliver for you consistently. So work on you first, work on your teams, set up the right fundamental things in place to be the very best partner, and you'll see the relationship thrive.
I mean, I don't think we could end on a better note than that. Bruno, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest on Scope. Well, friends, like all good things, this episode of On Scope, the marketing podcast, must come to an end. Bruno Gralpois has been an amazing friend to the ANA for such a long time, and it was just a pleasure to have him on the pod, breaking down what is one of the most consequential relationships we have in this industry. So many thanks to our dear friend Bruno. As a reminder, if you have a topic or guest that you'd like to see in a future episode, we would love to hear from you. That email, onscope@ana.net. And, as always, here is your moment of marketing meditation. Take a deep breath, relax those shoulders, and consider the following Turkish proverb. No road is long with good company. Think on that, and I'll see you next week.
This has been a presentation of ANA Studios.